Our speaker today is an artist that I would argue truly does sculpture in the expanded field, as Rosalind Krauss talked about it way more years ago than any of us want to know about. Her work entails installation, object making, media, and technology. Megan Grubb has an MFA from University of Michigan, STAMPS program, which is a remarkable program that requires an international experience of all of its students. Her BFA is from Wellesley College. She has studied and done residencies around the world, including has gone on expeditions to India, Tibet, Sri Lanka, and I'm going to go to the other side, and has done a long residency in Norway. She's been at the Studio Center. She is now a nominee for the Joan Mitchell Foundation grant. She has been the recipient of American Scandinavian Foundation Fellowship and Finlandia Foundation National Grant. Please welcome Megan Grubb.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk with you guys today and have a conversation.
Lights off.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Let me know if I'm speaking too quietly. I'm usually a pretty quiet speaker, so but I'll try and project it. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been great kind of having conversations with you over the last 6 months since we met, and I really appreciate this opportunity. So we'll get started. Let's make sure this works. Just to give you a little bit of an outline of what I want to cover today, I want to give you a little bit of background on who I am and some of the ideas that inform my work, the motivations that I'm working with in the studio, and give you some background on kind of my personal life experience and research projects that I've done that kind of also lead up to the studio work, shows and exhibitions, some installations that I'm going to cover today. And then I want to touch a little bit on some work that I'm doing right now, working on that's very different from past work, and then we can have a talk, questions. So I first want to go back and talk a little bit about where my work comes from in terms of personal background and experience. A lot of the work is this playing? Well, that's a video.
That's a lovely video.
Bummer. Okay. Hopefully this doesn't happen to the other videos. So a lot of my work comes from direct past personal experience with anxiety, mostly related to situations that suggest real or imagined spatial isolation, immobilization, and a lack of means of escape, so kind of feeling trapped.
Kind of like now, right?
Yeah, totally. Dark room, light in my face, shit not working, so anyway, so darkness, in my work, I'm thinking about the title of the talk here, Matters of Darkness. Darkness here can be kind of a situation that may leave you feeling immobilized either by fear or by virtue of not having the visual information about your surroundings and about kind of what's around you. So I do want to acknowledge, I know anxiety is a really common human experience, I'm not alone here. Especially in the history of art making and artists. But I really want to kind of pinpoint the specific characteristics of my experience that inform my work. So it's kind of a really purposeful intent here, an objective. And for me, the characteristics I'm working with really relate to spatial disorientation, distrust of my faculties of perception, such that I really doubt the reality of what I'm seeing or hearing in a situation of anxiety. So I really distrust my ability to know and make sense of my surroundings. And in this moment, I literally call everything into question. I'm kind of left teetering on this precipice of doubt. So responding to this psychological condition, my physical body undergoes change. My heart rate increases, my vision blurs, fingers and toes turn cold and numb. So it's a really kind of a situation that is both psychologically and physically felt and experienced. So what you should be seeing here are a series of clips that I've put together over the past 5 or 6 years. And they're all situations in which the thing that's happening is a bit mysterious. They're all clips of different light phenomenon situations. One is there's condensation on the windshield of a car, and there are lights from street lamps in a parking lot casting shadows of the leaves and the trees on, and the car's moving. And so there are multiple layers of movement, layers of obscurity, and you're left to kind of intuitively piece together what that situation may be or what's happening. And I'll use these video clips to spark ideas in the studio, imagining what an installation could be. That's that, use your imagination. It's awesome. It's really, really awesome. So about 5 years ago, I again, in an attempt to get really specific about what I'm talking about in my own experience, I mapped out these characteristics of personal anxiety, suggesting relationships between situation, physical symptoms, beliefs and fears, kind of what's going on in the world, what other things am I processing that are contributing to how I'm feeling about me and about the space that I'm in. So again, to kind of add to the background before we get into the work, in starting out down this path of inquiry, I didn't want to address the kind of generalized idea of anxiety. So I wanted to really root the creative work in specific real-life experience. And with some sponsorship from the Office of Research at the University of Michigan, I set out to provoke and initiate these anxious responses and test some of the hypotheses that I developed in the studio on relationships between situation and my physical psychological response. So I put myself in the most uncomfortable and unfamiliar place that I could think of and still gain access to at the time, and that was Greenland. So for me, this place, it's remote, it's unfamiliar, it's inhospitable, people shouldn't live there, few people do live there, and it's a real wilderness. And going there, for me, this undertaking was key to developing all these questions that I've kind of been thinking about abstracting in the studio. And I wanted to really reflect on how a powerful, mysterious, non-physical experience could arise out of something very physical, real space, and how this experience could be translated into a work of art. So Greenland's incredibly isolated, very little grows there, there are no trees, only 15% of the land is actually habitable because most of it is covered in ice. It's very hard to get in and out of Greenland. It's the least densely populated country in the world. And prior to traveling there, I expected that isolating myself in this place would cause me to feel very trapped, away from familiar routines, away from family, friends, cell phones, grocery stores, all the things that bring me comfort on a day-to-day basis, all the things that give my life structure. And I was there for 5 weeks. I camped there in the summertime. And the sun did not set for those 5 weeks. It circled in the sky. Its lowest point at about 1:30 or 2 in the morning was about 6 degrees off the horizon before it came back up again. So they were really long days. It's like, what do you do with yourself? You know, this was kind of the place that I wanted to be thinking about and asking those questions. This is another video. This is a bummer. Let's see. So my time there, you know, clearly felt skewed to life back home. Time didn't follow the same structure and rhythm that it did, you know, here in the Midwest. Sleeping felt kind of arbitrary when the sun doesn't set because your circadian rhythms can change in that environment. Also, envisioning space there, just cardinal directions, orientation, and where you are on Earth, you can imagine the longitudinal lines converging such that time zones are starting to converge. And you can imagine being in a place where you could literally step between time zones because all those systems that we set up to make sense of space start to not make sense in certain places. I imagine that more of the world was south than ever before, which was kind of true, but also not true, because everything's still extended out in all directions, really. So, this video footage was taken on Disco Bay in early June between midnight and 1 a.m. when the sun was near its lowest point in the sky. And using some simple tools, a weather station device, a GPS device, a thermometer, a pulse oximeter, I monitored and recorded the surrounding environment and then also my own physical and psychological emotional responses. And I took detailed notes on heart rate, temperature, blood oxygen levels, quality of sleep, fluctuations and feelings of isolation, anxiety, stress, sunrise, sunset times, wind speed, visibility, you name it. And I collected this information and I'm wondering if there may be a relationship, kind of a poetic relationship between a drop in temperature and my perceived feelings of, you know, fear or stress or something like that. And it, you know, it really didn't turn anything up. You know, there were no revelations there. But I did realize that my attempt to collect that data and distill it down into something was kind of this futile exercise in measuring an immeasurable experience, measuring powerful psychological or emotional content in the experience of being in this place. And that futile attempt to measure something that's immeasurable brought me to a little bit of study into the idea of the sublime. And I'm, again, far from alone in this objective to measure something immeasurable. It's been a subject of artists for a long time. Romantic painters were thinking about this years ago, trying to express mysterious aspects of wonder and intuition and overwhelming aspects of the physical environment for humans. So I made this drawing at the time to explain my definition of the sublime. You know, it's a bit of a Venn diagram, and you see the little human mind area, and most of that, you know, most of our kind of knowledge and information is coming from our senses of perception of the physical environment and everything that's around us. But there's this part of the mind that, you know, we can speculate is at the edge of our ability to comprehend. It comprehends that there are things out there that we can't understand. And this, of course, gets into mysticism and religion and all kinds of areas that I really haven't even worked. But it's this stuff that's, you know, beyond our expectations, beyond our ability to imagine or conceive, that I find makes life so incredible. It's such a trite statement, but this is really kind of where some of this work is coming from, and It has to do with the objectives that I have when I set up an installation in physical space. So this is a favorite romantic period painter, Caspar David Friedrich, and I love this image, this like tiny little human figure alienated by this vastness and heavy, overwhelming, raw nature. So for me, this painting suggests a key aspect of the sublime, and it's that there's this gap between what we can only begin to imagine and then what may actually exist. And that's what elicits the sensation of awe and wonder and fear and anxiety and all of those physical and psychological responses. So now, I'd like to get into some work. The first project I want to share with you is titled Apparition. And this piece was installed in a 5,000 square foot basement space in an abandoned building in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it was publicly voted in the top 25 for Art Prize in 2011. To give you a little bit of a sense of the space, this was the ground floor of the 30,000 square foot building that was being transformed into a temporary art venue. And the space was totally gutted, no electricity, it had been abandoned for 10 or 15 years. And these images were taken when I first toured the space, before I submitted a proposal to the curators for the show. And this was the basement. It was dark, damp, dirty. It was exactly the type of anxiety-producing space that I was looking for. You know what everybody else is, not everybody, but a lot of people aren't interested in working in this kind of environment, but this was perfect. And in the back corner of this basement, I found this beam of light that looked almost solid, like you could reach out and grab it with your hands. And it was all the moisture and dust and dirtiness of that basement air that made this beam of light into something really exquisite. So I took that idea. So this is the best. Put a little bit of music on. It's really trippy music. So I asked my buddy Patrick, he was in the architecture program at Michigan at the time, if he would take on this project with me. But we started with that idea of light materialized in space, that beam of light, and Maria with it wanted to expand it, use that to help us define this basement space in ways that describing the architecture that the other way couldn't. So. So for installation, we hung elastic material, 1/8-inch thick flat braided elastic from fishing line that was attached to support structures that we set between the I-beams in the ceiling of the space. And I think it was about 10,000 yards of elastic and about the same fishing line. It was a 5-week install.
Megan, what is the light source?
Oh, the light source are projectors. We rented them from the Technology Center at the University of Michigan, so they're really high performance projectors. There were 4 of them. So here's an orthographic view of that space. We occupied on that left side of the basement. And those yellow wedges show the beams of light. So it kind of shows the location of the projectors and the beams of light. And then it flowed through, it's about a 20-foot viewing area that they saw the work from. So the next project that I want to tell you a little bit about also hinges on darkness. This is an early concept drawing for the interior design of Outpost, which was a room that included a built floor, walls, ceiling, and an enclosed, created this enclosed, darkened, kind of rough hut-like room. So envisioning the experience of the space itself, the darkness, the surfaces of the wall, the creak of the floorboards, all of these things I wanted to contribute to a sense of uncertainty and a feeling of anticipation. So this was the finished interior space. And you can see these glowing spaces within the walls, floor, and ceiling where small light sources created this illusion. And the illusion developed from another past project that I'll show you briefly here. And it's based on the principle of recursion. Recursion is when an object or image is nested or repeated within itself. Fractals are an excellent mathematical example of recursion. On the left here, it's kind of a drawing demonstrating. I'm really excited about your mathematical principle. And then the image on the right here is this real life example. I'm sure we've all been there. That guy sitting in a public restroom looking at yourself, and there are two planes of mirrored planes, and you and the hand soap is repeated infinitely in either direction. And this is cool, but I wanted to build a recursive space in which the viewer's body was not the object in the recursion. So if you were standing in that bathroom, seeing that infinite space within the mirrors, you wouldn't be seeing yourself in that space. And I felt like that would be a magical experience, and that would be kind of startling and unexpected. So I found a solution to this puzzle with the addition of a two-way mirror, and striking a balance between lightness between the mirrored planes and total darkness outside the recursive space. So using plywood, aluminum, 1- and 2-way mirrors, a light source, watch battery, and some glass, I built this first tunnel in 2011. And there's a drawing kind of explaining how it works. The tunnels are placed on the floor and meant to be viewed in total darkness. So as the viewer approaches the work, they perceive a tunnel or shaft-like space that drops down into the ground, eventually disappearing into darkness. And I wanted to, again, bring this viewer into this physical, psychological state of feeling without telling them literally how they should feel. So I experimented with different forms of light inside the tunnel, and kind of obscuring the object itself, the object of light source. Responding to the work, viewers would describe feelings of subtle trepidation or apprehension, uncertainty, fear. One person experienced vertigo and needed to stay away from the tunnel. This one was large. It was 48 inches by 48 inches. So it had a real pull on the physical body in terms of being able to imagine occupying the space inside. So, and these were a series of small ones. I think I had about 36 that were 6 inches by 6 inches and a half inch deep. And this is where we get back to Outpost. I wanted to incorporate these light tunnels into the walls and the floor and the ceiling of this space to encourage an experience of wonder, mystery, something that kind of undermines your expectations of what the space should be. are schematic drawings detailing how I would build the tunnels into the floors of the space. And then drawings as I prepared to build the physical structure. And here's a prototype of the floor. And to build the space, I disassembled 90 shipping pallets to finish the interior surfaces. And as I was doing this, I really realized that the wood referenced this rustic cabin-like, hut-like interior. And the rough material made me think of a wilderness hut, and it brought me back to my time in Greenland. And the 2 nights that I stayed in this totally isolated hunter's hut on the edge of this giant ice fjord. You can kind of see that little red dot at the bottom of the picture on the left. I don't know why I was so excited to be there, but I was. And this is a drawing of traditional Arctic people's homes, specifically in Greenland. So with kind of these examples in mind, I developed, this is a video too. And I'm gonna have to pull out and show you. Oh, fine, okay. Is that okay, Joe?
It's your show.
Right? Okay, so the structure is modular. It was originally built at the School of Art and Design Studios in Ann Arbor. And I built it in 32 pieces that could be taken apart, and then I put them in a U-Haul, transported them to Detroit to the gallery, and then rebuilt the space there in about 2 hours. And then I finished the work there, installing the tunnels inside the hut, drywalling and painting the exterior, doing all the wiring.
It's a good solution.
Oh,
Click really fast.
sorry, I have to wait for it to think. There we go. So this project paid homage to a few of my favorite artists. Here, Alice Aycock's Low Building with Dirt Roof Mary invites you into this low, confining space, sunken into the earth, and it's described as this psychological physical space. So it was derived from the existing primitive shelters that Aycock was looking at in Pennsylvania, where this was cited, and it needed to be entered into in order to experience kind of the psychological effects of enclosure. Another favorite piece of Leo Parker's Cold Dark Matter was this installation constructed from a shed blown apart and then meticulously reassembled in the gallery as a system of hanging fragments, as if caught in this freeze frame of the process of explosion. So the use of raw materials, charred wood, this really visceral grittiness to this space, the materiality of the work, really kind of exciting to me. This is a view of the structure during the exhibition in the gallery space. The exterior walls are camouflaged within the gallery, painted white, and I didn't want it to look like a hut from the outside because I didn't want the viewer to be able to anticipate what the interior would be. So I wanted the difference between outside and inside to be as dramatic as possible, so that entering into this space became a more abrupt and powerful transition. So as you enter into the hut, the floor becomes less stable, the boards kind of bow, creak underfoot, your footstep changes from that solid, dampened concrete floor to a hollow, planked floor. And then you're in a completely dark space with these light tunnels that are in conflict with what your understanding of the thickness of the walls are based on the exterior experience of the room. So here again, this view is a little overexposed. It was really kind of dark inside the space, but you can see the location of the tunnels there. And a close-up of one of the points of light in these tunnels. I had scratched away at the back of the mirror where I attached the lights. So there's kind of really a non-object, representation of what the light is. The source of the light is also on the street. And then the next project, Spiral Shanty, is like Outpost, addressing wilderness shelters and this eerie makeshift space intended for human protection, but that can also make us feel vulnerable in kind of wilderness environments. And this piece was designed and built during a residency in rural Wisconsin last summer, and is now a permanent installation on site. It was also built of all reclaimed wood that I salvaged on site at the residency. And I wanted to focus on kind of leveraging the geometry of the architecture to contribute to that sense of unease or disorientation in the space. So here's some drawings showing the development of the design of the structure. Something that was twisting, so you weren't kind of question what was floor, what was wall, and how should you occupy the space physically. There wasn't kind of a given as most things are day-to-day life. We understand what our physical relationship is to the spaces we inhabit. This intended to kind of undermine that sensibility. This is a detail of the frame of the structure. Some of the other artists and residents occupying the structure hang out. And then I want to tell you a little bit about the work I'm doing now. I'm currently an artist in residence at Paul Art Space, which is a relatively new, really supportive, well-equipped residency program on an idyllic 5-acre property located just outside of St. Louis to the north. This is a shot of my studio that I took yesterday out at Paul. And the work that I've been making over the last 6 months or so leading up to, and then also during this residency, is very new to me, and unlike past projects that I've shown you today. But I think they also kind of have a lot of commonalities too. And this is a lot of the work that I've been making at Paul. It will be part of an exhibition at Heaven Gallery in Chicago. Opens next month. So while not yet complete, these are a few images that I have to share. And so this one is a small sculpture in the Long Fall series. While this work has very little to do with darkness, it does hinge on tension in physical space between objects and their environment. And tries to leverage the unexpected in the experience. How you really think a physical object should act and then how it does. installation. And, you know, all of this work is still kind of new to me, and I'm definitely processing it, but I'm thinking about aspects of tension between physical objects, one object acting upon another, and how this kind of fragile, tense situation defines the space between the objects and then also between the viewer and the object. Wondering if a kind of an empathetic relationship could